I didn't expect anything meaningful to come from that night. It was supposed to be simple: drop Lucas Reed off at his house and go home. That was it. Lucas was my brother Ryan Miller's best friend, a familiar presence in our lives for years, someone who existed in the background of family barbecues and late-night gaming sessions. He wasn't supposed to become anything more than that. Ryan had fallen asleep in the back seat halfway through the drive, his head tilted toward the window, breath steady. Lucas sat beside me in the front, quiet in a way that felt deliberate rather than awkward. The road stretched out ahead of us, dark and nearly empty, the low hum of tires filling the space where conversation usually lived. I told myself the silence didn't mean anything, but my hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Lucas broke it first. He commented on the song playing softly through the speakers, some old indie track Ryan used to overplay. His voice was calm, warm, carrying an ease that made people feel heard. I responded without thinking, and suddenly we were talking about music, then about work, then about nothing specific at all. The conversation flowed with an unexpected rhythm, like we were picking up from somewhere we'd left off years ago without realizing it. I had always known Lucas as Ryan's confident friend, the guy who could talk to anyone, who never seemed rattled. But sitting beside him, I noticed subtler things. The way he chose his words carefully. The way he listened without interrupting. There was a steadiness to him that felt grounding, and I found myself relaxing in his presence without understanding why. At a stoplight, I glanced at him briefly. He was looking out the window, jaw set, expression thoughtful. For a moment, I wondered what he was thinking about, and the curiosity surprised me. I quickly redirected my focus back to the road, reminding myself that curiosity was a dangerous thing. Lucas wasn't mine to think about like that. He was Ryan's friend. That alone should have been enough. Ryan shifted in his sleep and muttered something incoherent. Lucas smiled faintly, shaking his head. He always does that, he said quietly. There was affection in his tone, genuine and unforced. It reminded me how close they were, how long their friendship had lasted. Guilt pricked at me for reasons I couldn't fully explain. The rest of the drive passed too quickly. When we finally pulled up in front of Lucas's house, Ryan stirred awake, groggy and disoriented. He thanked me half-heartedly before stumbling inside without another word. The front door closed behind him, leaving Lucas and me alone in the car, engine still running. I expected Lucas to get out immediately. Instead, he lingered, one hand resting on the door handle. The silence returned, but it felt heavier now, charged with something unnamed. I turned the volume down on the radio, unsure why I felt the need to acknowledge the moment rather than escape it. "Thanks for the ride," Lucas said, meeting my eyes. There was a sincerity there that made my chest tighten slightly. "No problem," I replied. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. He hesitated again, like he wanted to say more. The porch light illuminated the side of his face, casting soft shadows that made him look more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. It struck me then how little I actually knew about him beyond his role in Ryan's life. "You ever feel like things are quieter than they should be?" Lucas asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. It wasn't casual. It wasn't small talk. I considered brushing it off, but something in his expression stopped me. "Yeah," I admitted. "Sometimes." He nodded slowly, as if that answer confirmed something for him. Another pause followed, longer this time. My instincts told me this was the moment to end the night, to wish him good luck and drive away. Instead, I stayed still, my heart beating just a little faster. Lucas finally opened the door, then stopped. He turned back to me, uncertainty flickering across his face. "Do you want to come in for a minute?" he asked. "Just to talk." The question hung between us, simple in wording but heavy with implication. I knew I shouldn't. I knew every reason why saying no was the right choice. Yet as I looked at Lucas, standing there, waiting, I realized that whatever line existed between us was already beginning to blur. I followed Lucas Reed inside before I could overthink the decision. The door closed behind us with a soft click that felt louder than it should have, as if it sealed us into a moment neither of us had planned but both had silently accepted. His house was dimly lit, orderly in a way that suggested control rather than obsession. Nothing about it felt staged. It felt lived in, quiet, honest. "Make yourself comfortable," Lucas said, setting his keys on the counter. His voice carried the same calm I'd noticed in the car, but there was tension beneath it now, like a restrained confession waiting for permission to surface. I stayed standing, hands in my pockets, unsure where to place myself. I won't stay long, I said, the words more for me than for him. Lucas nodded, though his expression suggested he didn't believe me. He poured 2 glasses of water instead of anything stronger, a choice that felt intentional. We sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, the distance between us careful but noticeable. The silence returned, but this time it didn't feel empty. It felt deliberate. You don't talk much around Ryan, Lucas said gently. I always wondered if that was by choice. I considered the question. I'm different with him, I replied. He's louder. I learned early on to be quieter. Lucas listened closely, elbows resting on the table. That doesn't mean you disappear, he said. It just means people don't always see you. The comment landed deeper than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I needed to be seen until he said it out loud. I looked away, embarrassed by the sudden vulnerability pressing at my chest. Lucas didn't rush to fill the silence. He gave me space, and somehow that made it harder to retreat. I don't talk much either, he admitted. Not about the things that matter. That surprised me. Lucas was always surrounded by people, always engaged, always confident. You seem like you have it figured out, I said. He smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. That's just practice. The conversation shifted slowly, touching on work frustrations, expectations, the quiet weight of living a life that looked fine from the outside. With every exchange, the distance between us seemed to shrink, not physically, but emotionally. I found myself leaning forward, invested in his words in a way that felt dangerous. At one point, Lucas stood to rinse his glass, and I watched him move through the space like he belonged there completely. The realization that I was seeing him without Ryan present, without context, unsettled me. This wasn't my brother's friend anymore. This was just Lucas, thoughtful, conflicted, human. I shouldn't be here, I said suddenly. Lucas turned, his back against the counter. Do you want to leave? He asked, not defensively, not pleading. The honesty of the question stopped me. I searched myself for the answer and didn't like how long it took. I don't know, I said finally. He nodded, accepting that uncertainty without judgment. Neither do I. We sat again, closer this time, not by design but by gravity. Our knees nearly touched. I was acutely aware of every small movement, every breath. When Lucas laughed softly at something I said, the sound sent an unfamiliar warmth through me. It felt intimate in a way I couldn't explain or excuse. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Ryan. I didn't check it, but the vibration alone was enough to snap reality back into place. Guilt washed over me, sharp and immediate. I stood up, pacing a few steps away. This isn't fair, I said, more to myself than to Lucas. He watched me carefully. I know, he replied. That's why I haven't touched you. The restraint in his words made my throat tighten. I met his gaze, and for a moment, the air between us felt impossibly heavy. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't convincing. He was simply acknowledging what was already there. I should go, I said again, though my feet didn't move. Lucas stepped closer, stopping just short of contact. If you walk out now, he said quietly, I'll understand. The choice sat squarely in front of me, clear and unavoidable. As I stood there, torn between loyalty and longing, I realized that whatever I decided next wouldn't just change the night, it would change the way I saw myself. I didn't remember deciding to stay, only that I was still there. The space between Lucas Reed and me narrowed until it no longer felt like distance at all, just an awareness of another presence close enough to matter. Neither of us spoke. Words would have made it too real too fast, and we were both already balancing on the edge of something fragile. I can't pretend this doesn't complicate things, Lucas said finally. His voice was low, careful. Ryan matters to me. The mention of my brother's name tightened something in my chest. Ryan Miller had always trusted us both, never questioning the stability of his world. He matters to me too, I replied. That's why this feels wrong. Lucas nodded, accepting the truth without arguing it away. He didn't try to justify anything. That restraint made it harder to leave. If he had pushed, I might have found my resolve. Instead, he stood there, honest and uncertain, mirroring everything I was trying not to feel. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, a deliberate choice that only highlighted the tension between us. The conversation turned quieter, more reflective. Lucas talked about how often he felt like he was living adjacent to his own life, fulfilling expectations without questioning whether they were his. I listened, recognizing the same pattern in myself. Different paths, same unease. I don't usually let people see this part of me, Lucas admitted. It's easier to play a role. I thought about how often I'd done the same, staying in the background, avoiding conflict by staying unseen. Maybe that's why this feels louder than it should, I said. Because neither of us is hiding right now. Quote, the clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second a reminder that time was passing whether we wanted it to or not. My phone buzzed again. This time I looked. Another message from Ryan, asking if I'd gotten home safely. The simplicity of the question made my stomach twist. I typed a reply, deleted it, then typed it again. Almost home, I finally sent. Lucas noticed the shift in my expression. You should go, he said gently. There was no disappointment in his tone, only understanding. Before this becomes something we can't walk back from. I stood, heart heavy, and nodded. At the door, I hesitated, my hand resting on the handle. Tonight mattered, I said. Even if it shouldn't have. It did, Lucas replied. That doesn't mean it has to define us. I left without looking back, the cool night air sharp against my skin. The drive home felt longer than before, the silence inside the car louder than any music. Every street light I passed seemed to ask the same question: what do you do with a truth you weren't ready to face? Over the next few days, everything looked the same on the surface. Ryan joked, complained about work, made plans for the weekend. I laughed when expected, nodded at the right moments. But underneath, something had shifted. I caught myself watching Lucas more closely when he was around, noticing the pauses in his speech, the way his gaze lingered and then pulled away. We didn't talk about that night. Not directly, but there were moments, brief, charged glances, conversations cut short, that said more than words could. The restraint was exhausting, yet it felt necessary. Neither of us wanted to be the one who broke the fragile balance holding everything together. One evening, as Ryan stepped out to take a call, Lucas found himself alone with me in the kitchen. The quiet stretched, familiar and dangerous. I've been thinking, he said softly, about what honesty actually costs. I met his eyes. And what did you decide? That avoiding the truth doesn't make it disappear, he answered. It just delays the damage. The weight of his words settled between us. I knew then that this wasn't over, not neatly, not quietly. Whatever we were circling around would eventually demand to be faced, one way or another. As Ryan's footsteps approached, Lucas stepped back, the moment dissolving as quickly as it had formed. But the silence that followed was different now. It wasn't empty. It was waiting.